Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pod Friends. I am your host, Matt Scott. That song was Pod Friends by the one and only Will from America, and we are back with yet another episode of Pod Friends, having conversations with people, some you know, some you don't know, all who by the end of Pod Friends, by the end of this episode, you will come to love through the conversations, through getting to know them. That's what Pod Friends is all about, this community. And today, I'm having a conversation with Chantele Francis, who you might know from her coverage on Reality Realness, her YouTube channel. You might know her from covering Big Brother and so many other shows. Chantele is phenomenal. She was a member of the class of 2020. And as we go along, as you hear her story, you'll see all the twists and turns and so many different things that she's been involved with in her life. It's such a phenomenal story. And in talking with her, we talked a lot about her work with tarot, with astrology, her grandmother, who was a narcoleptic medium, easy for me to say, maybe because it was like so wild to even hear it. But this is Chantele's life and her story. And this is really truly a unique one where we talk about her experiences embracing the performing arts, from ballet to acting to so on and so forth. We talk about how she actually went to the same school as Arissa Cox, from Big Brother Canada, and her process of auditioning for BB Can. We talk about her perspective and how she's manifested so many of the things that have come into her life, including being part of RHAP as a podcast, and as a very special bonus for free. Yes, for free. This is not normally a free service as far as I know, but for free, Chantele read a couple of tarot cards for not just me, but for all of us to kind of make some sense of it, kind of find some direction in life. And we talk about why that's important and what the meaning is. And so if you're someone who's kind of looking for your path, looking for where you want to go, this one's a really interesting one, because Chantele definitely introduced me to some new ways of finding my own path in life. And so I'm excited for you to hear from her. I really loved having her on. Chantele, I'm so thankful for you and you being part of this. And speaking of part of this, it's not just me and the interviewee having a conversation, but you, the listeners, are part of this as well. And I want to know what you think. I want to know what jumps out to you, what inspires you, either from this week's Pod Friends or from one of the past ones. And so you could do that by leaving a voicemail at speakpipe.com/podfriends. You could go there on your phone. You could go there on your computer. But take a second now, go to speakpipe.com/podfriends. Maybe you don't have a voicemail you want to leave, but pull it up, because I want to hear from you whenever you do. It means so much to me, so much to our guests when we hear how our stories resonate. That encourages us to share more, encourages me to go out and really have more of these conversations. And so again, speakpipe.com/podfriends. Another thing I want to plug before we dive in is just that it's the start of the month and a great time to become a RHAP as a podcast patron, which so many of the people who you hear from are and started out as. And it's really incredible because there's this powerful community. Being a patron, getting to know other people, getting to know some of the podcasters, getting to talk with and interact with Rob Sesternino, creator of this network, who many know through Survivor, through his coverage and the like. And so there's so much that comes with being a patron. But, among other things, there's the patron exclusive podcast feed. There are patron only weekly podcasts and activities, and discounts to live shows and access to tickets from live shows when those come out. So there's so much amazing stuff when it comes to being a patron of RHAP. I've been one since before being a podcaster, and am thankful to still be one, proud to still be one, still support this community that we know and love. And you can check that out at patreon.com/RHAP. I'd also encourage you to support Pod Friends. And one way you could do that is by subscribing, by going to robhasawebsite.com/podfriendsfeed, or hitting that subscribe button wherever you are listening. And of course, following on social media on Twitter at Hey Pod Friends to keep up, to see what's happening, to see maybe some clips of the show I might be posting soon, and so much more. And of course, if you want to get in touch, you could tweet me at MattScottGW. I mentioned at Hey Pod Friends. You could also email podfriends at robhiswebsite.com. So many plugs, so many places to point you. But one last thing I'll say is that if you want to suggest a future guest for Pod Friends, you could do that by going to bit.ly/podfriendsnom. That's bit.ly/podfriendsnom. That's right. That's what's going on. And now, without further ado, let me clear my throat and let me introduce today's guest. Making her way to the podcast, hailing from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, she is a member of the RHAP class of 2020, but so much more. She's an actor, a flight attendant, a ballerina, an astrologer, a hypnotherapist, a tarot reading life coach, though you know her best as a reality TV junkie and maybe even as the creator of Reality Realness on YouTube. Please welcome the one, the only, Chantele Francis. So the last time I did a recap, a BB recap, Big Brother recap, I had my little ring light here. I was just doing my thing, having a good time with Taryn and Melissa on the recap. Rob wasn't there that day, and my computer plug came unplugged, so I was like, oh my gosh, I need to get up and do it. So I private chatted like, okay, I'm gonna take care of this. I turned off my video, didn't mute. I proceeded to knock over my ring light, and it's like, oh, let me just. Maybe it didn't get picked up on the podcast. Maybe it did. But we all have our moments. Have you had? I say that though, and admit one of my minorly embarrassing moments to say, have you had situations that have gone off the rails in terms of you're on a podcast and then something unexpected I mean, you have actually been house invaded on a podcast.
That's what I was kind of going to bring up. But most recently, when we would all have just met in New York, and I wasn't supposed to do the recap for the finale of Big Brother Canada 10, but I happened to be able to get on an earlier flight to come back to Toronto to do the recap with Tara, Melissa, and Jacob Jones. And while we were podcasting, about half an hour in, I hear a knock on my door, and to find out, and I usually wouldn't leave to go and answer the door during a podcast, but I heard them having some sort of party, and they have parties all the time. So it was normal for me to hear them making noises, but it was abnormal for them to be knocking on my door when they had people downstairs. I was just like, oh, did maybe something happen? So I was just a little bit worried that they needed me for something specific. That's why they were knocking on my door. They have people there, so it can't be that much of an emergency. So I was worried. So I go and open the door, and I find out that my downstairs neighbors are best friends with the winner of Big Brother Canada, who had been my downstairs neighbor for 2 years, and I didn't realize that it was him. And they came onto the podcast to explain, because I was like, I don't know how to explain it to these guys. This is too much. I'm mind blown right now. So they came in, and they did. It was so unexpected. I'm still in shock about it to this day. And so that's definitely a time where something completely unexpected happened that I wouldn't have been able to plan if I wanted to. That was shocking and will definitely go down in my podcast moments in history. It's still a shocking moment.
That's such a great answer, and I did not even mean to set you up for that. But it's funny because in that moment too, it was so wild and unexpected. It was also really unexpected because I just saw you a full 24 hours before, and I'm like, wait, how is this happening? How is Chantele right in front of that beautiful sunny sunset backgrounds right now? I don't understand. What is space and time? But also, I don't know. In my mind, when it comes to you, and this is part of why I want to have this conversation, it tracks because a lot of the times that I've been listening to you on podcasts, including when you were on our little Black Voices of RHAP panel, I just found myself sitting back thinking, Oh my gosh, like Chantele has experienced so much in life, and somebody needs to interview her and like catalog it and bring it all together. So I'm not, I mean, maybe this sounds weird and maybe someone will take this out of context, but I'm not surprised that you were home invaded. Just
I mean,
because.
okay, I'm also not surprised that I'm home invaded because I am the type of person that has really wild stories
Yeah.
happen to them. So
Hmm.
I remember one time I was younger, my dad lives in Las Vegas, and I went to a Janet Jackson show, and like it was I think the Velvet Rope Tour, like 50,000 people at the stadium. And I bumped into a friend of mine from I was 10 years old that was dancing, like, I don't know if he was dancing for like the pre show or what, but like I bumped into him and I hadn't seen him in like 15 or 20 years. And I was like, what am I seeing Frankie Louise here for? Like, how this is wild. And like, yeah, he's a boogie Brad and he was like dancing for her show. And I'm like, how am I going to bump into you out of all these people? I don't even live in Las Vegas regularly. Like, and I see someone that I know that I went to school with when I was like 8 or 9 or 10. Like,
Oh my gosh.
so just that happens all the
That's
time. I could be on a flight, I'll be sitting beside someone I know, or I know some like 1 degree of separation, or on a beach. Like it always happens that I have some wild coincidence as to how I know people. So it's not surprising that it happened to me. I was just
yeah.
floored that it was all captured on that pod. Like it was just, I was like, I wasn't supposed to be on this podcast. I got on an earlier flight. Like
Yeah.
it was just so synchronistic. And yes, synchronicity is kind of my brand, but I was even shocked and blown away by it.
Yeah, and I think that this is such an interesting thing to talk about. And it's interesting to hear that a lot of these coincidences happen often for you because I feel like at certain points in my life, I've had more of those moments than others where it's like, oh, this can't just like there's no way that this coincidence happened. There's no way I didn't know that thing that was the connective tissue between like oh, me being here and my friend, like when I was 8 years old or something like that. I went to Disney World, eh, flew all the way from New Jersey to Florida with my family, and we run into two of my good friends in my tiny grade school growing up. It turns out my parents though coordinated that, so I thought it was a coincidence. So I'm not as lucky as you in that sense, but like, what do you think is it about you? Because I feel like as we have this conversation, we're gonna kind of dive into some stuff that's more, I don't know what the word is. Like, I don't know if mystical is the right word or what word you would put on it, but there's a lot that you're tied in with that's like really cool to me and probably to a lot of people. But I think
Okay.
the coincidences like overlap with that energy that you have.
Okay, I think I'll do a whole progression as to why I think it's happened. So I don't know if I
Okay.
mentioned it in, when I kind of was
Uh-oh.
filling out a little bit about me. But my grandmother, so this is a story that I tell at times. When she was about 8 years old, she's from Montserrat, which is an island just outside of Antigua. And
Hmm.
when she was about 8, so that was in probably the 1920s or so, she got some sort of ailment that they couldn't detect her heartbeat. So they pronounced her to be dead. So
Hmm.
she had passed away for like 2 days, 2 or 3 days. They had her on like a wooden slab and her feet were bound and her arms were tied. And they had invited her friends and her schoolmates to come in and say goodbye to their friend that they were going to be burying. And so while they were coming to pay their regards, one of them saw her toe wiggle, got freaked out, and finds the doctor. And my grandmother came out of whatever this state that she was in for the 2 or 3 days. So from that point forward, A, she was narcoleptic. And
Yeah.
B, she was always able to kind of teeter between life and death. So yes, she saw dead people as like, clear as you're seeing us today. Like she was able to
Yeah.
see people that had passed on, or she was able to see that people were going to pass on, and she was able to let people know if like, hey, you should have this checked or this is happening. So she was a medium. So my whole life, I've known my grandmother as being a medium, and I was always fascinated by it. I always thought it was just so funny because like she would always be falling asleep, and I'm like, "No, Granny, stay awake, gotta stay awake." And but like then she would have some sort of like meeting with
Right.
somebody that had passed on. So it was something that was always very familiar to me. And then with my mom, not, but this is not the same. She's my like that grandmother is my dad's mom, but my mom and
Right.
we were always fascinated by this as well. So we used to play kind of psychic games with each other. So we would like, if she would go to the store, I would see if I can send her messages as to things that I'd want her to bring home. And we'd be practicing that all the time, or like practicing reading each other's minds. It's just stuff like that. I've always been tapped into trying to communicate with other senses. And so it really was something like I bought my first tarot deck when I was in high school. Like I was always just interested in the occult, in spirituality, in what we were capable of achieving with the power of thought and the power of our minds. And so I believe I purchased, I think I was in high school, maybe I was 14 or 15. It was called The Celestine Prophecy. And that book, I thought it was the most amazing book that I'd ever read in my entire life. I was inspired. I was like, this is the answer to everything. So I gifted everybody that book. My mom got that book. My friends got that. Everybody got that book for Christmas. Like this was like my golden imprint of like how to live life and understanding life in the universe. And so that book, I think, was the catalyst that kind of changed my life there. And then I was a teenager and I started doing all my wild and crazy things and going to raves and parties and whatnot. But when I was living in Montreal, I saw The Secret. So I'm sure you've heard of The Secret by Rhonda Byrne.
Absolutely.
And that I really resonated with, like, oh wait, I'm understanding a little bit more about how your thoughts create your reality, and how what you put out there you're going to receive back, and it just really was making sense to me. And then I moved to Vancouver, and Vancouver was just so boring that I was like, well, you know what, let me go and tap into this spiritual world that I was interested in. So I became a certified law of attraction life coach, where we use a lot of the ideas that were stated in The Secret as a way to help other people being able to actualize their dreams and goals. And so while I was over there, I was in like angel study groups and like, learning more about tarot, more about the law of attraction. And then when I moved back to Toronto, I got certified in tarot card reading. So I really got to be really proficient with learning how to read cards. Obviously, I've always read tarot, oracle cards. And then recently, so during the pandemic, then I decided to bring it to the next level, where I became a certified hypnotherapist. And so with all the training that I've kind of learned, I've been using that in hypnotherapy to be assisting people that are in the creative arts in actualizing their dreams, goals, and reality. So I'm kind of merging it all together and making a kind of like my own recipe for how people can actualize their goals. And because I came from the arts and I'm a lover of the arts, I'm focusing mostly on my actor friends that are looking to level up in their careers.
Wow. Okay. There's a lot here. And I need you to know, I'm on board. I'm excited for this conversation and where it goes. I hope that you have like your tarot cards within reach or something like that.
Actually.
We will get there. I'm a little scared, but we will get there.
Scared? Why are you scared?
I don't know. I don't know what the cards will say. I feel like there might be a card reading at some point. I don't know if that's free as part of this podcast because I don't have to pay. I'm happy to Venmo you after.
We don't have Venmo in Canada, so nice try.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I guess so. Sorry.
But you can actually cash out my stepmom.
Okay, yeah, I'll work on the cash out your stepmom. I want to actually, before kind of diving into that, because I think all that's really interesting in terms of even the law of attraction and The Secret, which I know a lot of people have their thoughts and like a lot of people are critics of it, but I am very captivated by these things and everything you mentioned. I want to start out though by, just speaking for the people, some of the people out there who like, what are you talking about? Your grandmother was a medium and also a narcoleptic medium at that, and and able to see dead people. And I'm sure, of course, you encounter this at different points where people are like, I don't believe that. I'm skeptical. The skeptics are out there. Capital S skeptics. Like, that's how established they are, because they'll question a lot of things. But like, what's your response to those people who are like, I'm not bought in? Because I feel like by the end of this, they will be like bought in completely. But what's like, how do you navigate that question or that doubt?
Well, I have to say that most people that are in my circle, they
Yeah.
are going to be more in alignment with the same thoughts and beliefs that I have. And so I don't resonate with people that aren't really on that same frequency. And so I do feel that everything is vibration, thoughts are vibration, beliefs are a vibration. And if we're not on an energetic level, we're not going to be kind of frequenting in the same bubble. So
Yeah.
I don't come across that much anymore. I'm also not really, it's not my job to make anybody believe anything, right? I do come
Mm-hmm.
from the school of thought where you can believe whatever you choose to believe, whatever has been printed on you from your 0 to 7, because that's kind of when you're highly impressionable, whether it's societal beliefs, whether it's beliefs from your parents, whether it's your teachers, whether it's your church leader, whatever, those you beliefs really come imprinted at those times. And then they
Mm-hmm.
kind of get reinforced daily in your adult life. And you don't even realize that these are kind of subconscious programmings that have been going on for years. And so unless you want
Yeah.
to change some of these beliefs, I it's not really like you believe them, so they're true. Like it's true for you.
Yeah.
Like if you don't believe that there are anything outside of what you see in your 3D reality, that's true for you and that is your truth. But I if somebody were to come to me, that means that there is an openness that they would like to change, they would like to maybe see things differently, they would like to have their mind open up and expanded a little bit. And so then I would be willing to work with somebody, but I'm not really in to convince somebody when they don't believe it. If they don't want to believe it into it, then then they don't have to. And whatever they believe
Yeah.
to be true is true for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the thing that's really powerful about that I mean is in my mind, it's so beautiful that it's validated by so many ways of thinking, which is just that our minds are really powerful, and our, our intuition and our being, whatever that might be, because that's a lot. There are a lot of things within that. Like, it's really powerful. And at the same time, if you're saying, oh, I can't do this, or I don't believe
That's
this, or
true.
this isn't possible, well,
Mhm.
then it's not going to, there's a
Absolutely.
much more slim chance that it'll be possible. So this is all fascinating. I'm still stuck with your grandmother. Just before we kind of get more to you though, and your story of like growing up, were there any like interesting stories of what you saw or experienced around you? Because I
Mhm.
would imagine that to find your own, way of seeing, I don't know what to call it, shorthand, but to like find your own ways of seeing and
Mhm.
navigating the world and understanding it, like it could help to see other people and be like, oh, that's a thing that's real, that's possible. You were kind of talking about this a little bit with your grandma and your mom, but was there anything that really like opened your mind to this, to like the ability to be a
Um,
hypnotherapist and like to all the things?
well, I mean, we were talking about in the beginning how I'm really lucky and I'm really synchronistic and I have a lot of amazing things that always happen to me. And people are like, oh my God, you're the luckiest person. And I'm like, I know I am. I believe that I am. And it gets reinforced into my life on a regular basis that I have really inane coincidences that happen. And so
Hmm.
that is one way that really reinforces that I'm on the right path, because I do feel that synchronicities is things lining up, that it's really me being in flow, allowing my intuition to guide me. And when my intuition guides me, all these synchronicities happen. And that just tells me that I'm in flow. But one thing that happened when I was a lot younger, and I believe
Hmm.
it was the same year my grandmother, the narcoleptic medium, passed
Yeah.
away. I went to England. So she lived most of her life in England. And so all my family on that side, like my dad's side, is still in England right now.
Hmm.
So I'd go to England in this particular summer, and I stayed with my cousin Renee, and we were at my auntie and uncle's house, and every night, every night without fail, we used to make food in the living room, watching TV till late, like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And we're like 13 years old and we're like staying up so late. And this one night I was like, you know what? I don't want to stay up anymore. I want to go to bed. And she's like, no, let's stay up longer. I'm like, no, I don't want to. And we got in this huge fight. And I'm like, I'm not staying up. And like, I go up the stairs and I'm like so angry and like slam my door and she slams her door and we both go to sleep. And I just kind of just doze kind of off into slumber. And I feel like this like jolt and I hear this sound and like I wake up and I hear like an alarm kind of going up and I still remember this smelled like vinegar. Like it's just like some sort of vinegary kind of smell. So I go and I open my door and I can't open the door. And I'm thinking like, maybe I'm still in a dream. I'm like, well, I don't understand what's going on. The door gets kicked down. So fire marshal's there. He picks me up. He carries me down the stairs. We're going down the stairs and I look into the living room where me and my cousin just were sitting and there is a vehicle in the living room. And it had pushed all the way through. There's an island in the middle and it hit the fridge. And so the smell of vinegar was all the condiments just exploding all over the place. The alarm that I was hearing was the car door. Like the door was still open. The keys were still in the ignition. So I'm hearing this alarm to find out that some kids went joyriding around a bend. They came around, they lost control and they came down the hill into our living room. And if I hadn't had such a strong urge not to stay up late, I would not be here right now. So that was one of the first times that I really clearly saw that my intuition, it could have been my grandmother that was guiding me in that moment because this would be her family and like that part of like our heritage and history. It could have been that, it could have been my intuition, it could be a combination of both, but it was so clear that I was not supposed to be in that living room that was something that really allowed me to start believing and trusting when I have a really gut feeling and gut instinct about something.
Yeah, and whoa, what, like, first of all, just to verbally react, because this whole time my jaw's on the floor. But I think it's this reminder of something that I've heard a lot of, which is listen to yourself sooner. Like, listen to your gut, listen to yourself. We have all these different messages coming in, like trying to push us in different directions, and sometimes we might overthink things. But that gut feeling should not be fully denied and ignored at all. And you know what? Here's what I have to say. There's so many things I could ask you about, like, your life and your story and your journey. But also I realize, like, part of me just wants to sit back and be like, just tell me when you need me. Tell me when you need me. But yeah, like, I guess
I got stories for days.
Well, I know you do. And I'm like, how do we get to all of them? Do we get to all of them? But, you know, maybe that's the complexity of this. But we'll try to get to some of them, I think. I guess, like, part of what I want to piece together is what was growing up in kind of that path like for you. You've told us a little bit of the bits and pieces, but I'm so curious of what your path was to kind of where you are now, because you did really start out telling us, like, introducing a little bit of what you're up to now. And you're an actor, hypnotherapist, like tarot card reader, astrologer, all the things, reality TV junkie. We know these are all like my pro wrestling type of intro things for you. But like, what's the what was that path like, so people could understand more of how you got to this place?
So I was always like, I was put into dance when I was about 4 years old. I took tap and ballet. And I was always really like, I loved learning. I loved having those like math books where I'd, practice math on the weekends. And I loved puzzles. And my mom would always tell me the story when I was like 18 months and I was doing 100-piece puzzles and I was slapping her hand being like, no, mommy, like when puzzle pieces don't go in the right spot. So I was always loved puzzles. I love math. I love like learning. It was just always something that I enjoyed. A big joke is the fact that like my favorite TV show when I was little was MathNet, and it was a take on Dragnet, and it like teaches you how to do math, but in like this like cop kind of way. And so like I just loved learning and stuff like that. And so my mom obviously knows this of me. And when I was about 8 years old, I was in grade 3, and she was just starting to notice that for whatever reason, everybody in my class, it was no longer cool to be smart anymore. It was kind of like when kids were starting to not necessarily rebel, but kind of showing where their interests lie. And school wasn't necessarily where a lot of my classmates' interests were still lying. And my mom was like, oh my gosh, I really don't want my daughter to not want to be smart anymore. So she prayed. She's like, okay, I am going to pray that there is a school like Fame for my daughter so that she'll still want to be smart and still want to do well and excel. So she prays, puts this out to the universe. This is a thought that she's sending out into the universe. And I can't remember the timeline, but we'll just say a week later, my teacher, Mr. Knowles, comes up to my mom and says, hey, there's this art school that I think that Chantele should audition for. I'm going to ask you and 2 other students in the class if they'd like to audition for it. And it's a school for the performing arts. It's a 6-week audition program. And then you'd be able to go to the school for grade 4 to grade 8. And then there's a high school that has this gifted arts program. So my mom was like, I can't believe this. My prayers have been answered. So I went on this audition for 6 weeks where I had to sing, I had to dance, I had to act, I had to paint. And it was the coolest experience I've ever had. I was in the Brown group, and it was amazing. And I was one of 60 kids that got in for grade 4. So I went to Claude Watson School for the Performing Arts, and that really started my trajectory in wanting to be really expansive and learning all about everything artistic. So I was a drama major when I was in grade 5, but then I realized that all the dance majors got to be in more things for like our end of the year show. So then I was a dance major. I danced in everything. I started competing in dance outside of school. So I played multiple instruments. I sang in the choir. I can sing in multiple languages. And it really allowed me to open my mind and understanding all things artistic. So I am an artsy fartsy. I'm an arts kid junkie. Like, I love the arts, and it's such a small community of people that went to the school. It's only 300 people can go to Claude Watson. We call it Mini Claude, the elementary school. And so if I find a Claudie, like, we will go and we will like talk for like, oh my God, this teacher, oh my God, did you do this? Or did you do Art Alive? And did you go into Kiwanis Festival? And like, yeah, Claudie is like the nickname. So Mini Claude is like, if you're talking to somebody that just went to the high school. So I went to Earl Haig Secondary School, Claude Watson's program for dance. And then Mini Claude is the actual elementary school. And we were called Claudies. So Mini Claude or Claudies.
Wow.
So, I don't know if I answered your question, but
no, you did. I'm just like, well, you are.
Yeah.
No, you're
arts.
You're like actively answering it. It doesn't sound like. So here's the thing I think about when you mention the arts school is that, they are so relatively small, but also a lot of those kids will go on to do like great, amazing things. And as far as I know, you are the most notable Claudie out there.
No,
that's exactly what I was going to ask. That's what I'm asking. Like, where did the Claudies end up?
Lots of Claudies are pretty. I mean, they might not be like winning Oscars, but some notable Claudies are Sarah Polly. Sarah Polly, her locker was beside mine for in grade 5 and in grade 9. I think we had our lockers beside each other. So Sarah Polly, she's a director now, but she was like an actor in like Road to Avonlea, which was a TV show, and Adventures in Baron Munchausen. I remember we went to that for a school trip in grade 5, or we were in grade 4, she was in grade 5. So that's the notable Mini Claude. Rachel Scarston, I think her name is. She was, you would know who these people were if I saw pulled up their like IMDb.
I mean, I'm not the person to ask. I'm sure there are people who are like, oh my gosh, Them too?
Um,
I don't know anything though, Chantele, beyond like the Big
one
Brother
other
right now.
notable Claudia that many of this group would
Ooh.
know would be Miss Arissa Cox. So
Oh,
Arissa
yes.
Cox was a Claudie, so she's a year older than me. Her major was visual arts, so mine was dance. She was visual arts, and so she also went to Mini Claude and Claude Watson program at Earl Haig, and so that's a notable Claudie that most of
Mhm.
this audience would know. Going to the high school, if you know Scott Speedman, he's pretty famous. He went to high school with us. I wasn't at the school at the time, but Deborah Cox went to,
Oh,
not I don't think any
yeah.
relation to Arissa, went to
Oh,
the high
so
school as
much.
well. These are just the people off the top of my head, and like all of the people,
Wow.
like a lot of people that I know are like working actors, but like making a living, absolutely, but they're not super notable. But definitely we have a long list of like Ennis Esmer, Aaron Abrams were two people. They were MCs at all of our shows at Earl Haig, and I used to
Mhm.
dance for all those shows. And so you might know them from like The Blind Spot or Hannibal or a lot of different TV shows that they've both been on. So there's definitely a lot of people that you might know who they are, but didn't know A, that they were Canadian, B, that they're from Claude Watson
Yeah.
or Earl Haig, or C, that their names. But lots of people.
Wait. So going to like one of the tangents of where your life has led you, you mentioned Arissa Cox, but one thing I know is that you've auditioned for, well, obviously for many things as an actor and all of the above, but also for Big Brother Canada, I believe, right? And
Mhm,
so
mhm.
does Arissa Cox know that you went to school together at the same
Yeah.
time? And
She definitely knows who I am, 100%, because it was at the time where we still know everybody's first names and last names. So a recent time, it was before the pandemic. I was working at the Royal Art, the ROM, the museum in Toronto, and
right.
her best friend was throwing an event there, and I was kind of working for a promotions company at that particular event. And so actually, you'll probably find me the video. I'll send it to you. I had her do this little activation where we were dancing, whatever. But it's like,
Mhm.
she knows me like, hey, Chantele Francis. Like, she doesn't know me as just Chantele. She'll know my first and last name because you just
Yeah.
know first and last names of people that you went to school with when you're 9 years old, you know?
Yeah.
So she knows who
Yeah.
I am. And I did go to a taping once a few years ago, and she saw me like, oh my God, Chantele. And so she brought me and the people that I was with up onto the stage, and we took a picture with her and stuff like that. So she knows who I am. Our moms probably will remember each other because there's not that
Oh,
many black
yeah.
people in the school, and
Mm,
so
yeah.
you kind of know all the other black moms. And so yes, she definitely knows who I am. In
Yeah.
terms of auditioning for the show, I've
Yes.
made it past like the first couple hoops before,
Mhm.
many times actually, a few times I've filled out the paperwork. It's really frustrating. And but they do ask you, who do you know that may be on TV? And I do know a lot of people that have been on TV and stuff like that. And so I don't know if my loose, I'm not really friends with her, but I know her and we've known each other. She's been in my circle for over 30 years. I don't know if that maybe prevents me from maybe making it to the next level just because they don't want to see like nepotism or, favoritism or it's seeming to be unfair. So I'm not sure, but I've not made it onto Big Brother Canada yet.
I think they're holding you for the best
Season
for
10.
the I don't know what the season. It's going to be a season where Arissa goes from being producer to actually being in the house, and they're going to have someone who she knows. It's going to be a pair situation, and you will be
Love
in there with
it.
Arissa. They're holding you for
Manifest
that.
that.
We're manifesting it right now. I think that this might be it. I don't know. Maybe it's a stretch. I don't know if it works as well if I'm manifesting it for you.
Well,
but
I'm putting it out there as well because
okay,
like from
good.
our lips to God's ears, let's make that
Take
happen.
it. Take it. This is amazing because there's so many different directions and kind of areas where your life goes. So you mentioned like this performing arts one, knowing Aris Cox and many other amazing people in the performing arts. But
Mm,
what was
to
your
where?
direction like from that time that you mentioned? Kind of picking up back where you left off of studying the performing arts, graduating from that school. Where did you go from there?
I ended up after high school. I ended up wanting to work in bars and going to raves, and so I
Mm-hmm.
kind of put aside all of like my art stuff. I was always an actor, so I always had an agent. I was always in the union. I was always auditioning. But then I decided to get a fashion marketing and merchandising diploma from a school, and so that was really interesting because my favorite class in that one was color theory. So I was learning about color theory and like I
Yeah.
definitely really enjoyed this fashion marketing and merchandising program. So I did that for 2 years. And then I was bored. That's a thing that comes with me is that like I get kind of bored. So I always wanted to try and learn new things. And so with this
Mm-hmm.
boredom, one of my best friends was living in Montreal. So I was like, every weekend I was like flying over to Montreal to go and visit her. And then one day I just decided to stay, and I stayed in Montreal for 8 years. So while I was in Montreal, I still did, yes, had an agent.
Right.
I started taking acting classes with my dear acting coach, Jacqueline McClintock. She has
Mm-hmm.
since passed away, but she was like, I could tell you stories about Jacqueline. Like she literally changed my life. Everybody
Uh-huh.
that went to classes with Jacqueline are some of my closest friends to this date. My best friend currently right now, we met in 2004 in Jacqueline's class. And so that's where my love and understanding more so about acting really kind of came into play. And it also kind of comes into play with what I feel about synchronicity and the universe, because what she would always say is like, you have to tell the truth of every situation because there's somebody in that audience that may have lived through that experience, and you want
Mm.
to honor that
I love
experience
that.
that they lived. And that always, like, she would say it, she'd be like crying. She's like, you got to be telling the truth. You got to be telling the truth. And so telling the truth is something that I do feel kind of lives in that synchronistic world, right? It's allowing yourself to be open and vulnerable. It's allowing yourself to connect. It's allowing yourself to be in flow. It's allow yourself to let these synchronicities happen. And so if I'm doing that in my regular day-to-day life, I feel like that connection is also what I'm attracted to in my acting life. And so she really ignited that within me. Like, yes, I've read every play and I've done every soliloquy, but something about what she was teaching, she uses the Meisner technique, which is kind of like answering, repeating, and
Mm.
living kind of truthfully under imaginary circumstances. And so with that, it kind of was magical, and it kind of was synchronistic, and it was kind of spiritual. And so she really brought that out of me as an actor, and I felt that it was also in line with me spiritually as well. So that's up to Montreal.
Well, it's powerful though because you speak about this idea of finding you're speaking truth and but that also means finding your truth, which is something that a lot of young people, actually like a lot of everybody kind of struggles with. Like, how do I figure out who I am, what my truth is, what my voice is, especially when you're in environments where you might not be connected with that thing that is your truth or who you are or your identity. Like, did you ever have any challenges finding where you were? Or I mean, on the flip side, I kind of wonder, because it kind of seems like you found that in one sense very early joining performing arts, but were there any challenges like figuring out who you were or where you wanted to be on the journey? Because this seems great. I'm just like, figure out what you want to do, go do it. But I always know it's not that simple for folks.
Well, okay, I can say that maybe not being in alignment, I kind of went a little wild. So I definitely have been a party girl. I've been like, when I was living in Montreal, I was out all the time. I was drinking all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I was definitely, I don't think, in alignment in, I'll say, my blackout years. And so, like Montreal days, as much as like I did really value what I was learning in my acting class, and I took that the most seriously, absolutely. But
Yeah.
like outside of that, like working in bars and like really, I think that I was acting out for the fact that I didn't feel like I was living my truth. And so it was kind of like a rebellion against inauthenticity. And so I would say that I was out of alignment for a lot of probably from ages maybe 16 to like 30, 32. I was
Wow.
probably out of alignment, I would say, because I was really allowing myself to drink a lot and I'd have the booze blues and I'd be really kind of depressed. And I'm like, I'm not really a depressed person. So then I'd drink some more. So I'd just be fun again and happy. And then I'd have the booze blues. And so it was kind of like a perpetual cycle. Of working in bars in Montreal, you're allowed to be wasted on shift. So I was wasted every night on shift. And it was kind of a downward spiral, we'll say, because I wasn't fully being authentic to what I wanted. And so I decided to give myself an intervention. I cut Montreal off cold turkey.
Yeah.
And that's why I moved to Vancouver. Because I'm like, I only know one person in Vancouver. I won't be influenced to be super fun party girl and go and being a bad influence on myself and others. And I would be able to have a little more clarity with maybe what I wanted to do. And so that's actually one of the reasons why I moved to Vancouver is they have a huge film and television industry. So I was like, well, let's see what it's like in Vancouver. Let's see what opportunities I can have for myself there. They don't have a lot of diversity in that industry over there. So I'll probably be a hot commodity, book a lot of parts. And I don't know anybody there to distract me. So I can really focus on me, my acting career. And that actually allowed me to have the space to start diving deeper into spirituality, deeper into the law of attraction, deeper into, connecting with being able to create my own reality. So it was my own intervention that sent me across the country to boring Vancouver so that I can have a spiritual awakening, we'll say.
Wow, and it's really powerful to hear and interesting to think about because where I am now, I just turned 30 in May. Actually, a couple of days after we saw each other in New York. And it's interesting.
You're a Taurus? I thought you were a Cancer.
I'm a Taurus. Oh, I'm a Taurus. Oh no.
When's your actual birthday? My brother's a Taurus.
Cinco de Mayo, May 5th.
Oh, Cinco de Mayo.
Yes.
Okay, nice.
Yes. So
my intervention day, not intervention, my home invasion day was on your birthday.
It was. You got invaded on my birthday. It was it was really chaotic and scary moments at that time. I'm glad that it worked. It all worked out for you. Also weird that I was talking about home invasions here on Pod Friends, coincidentally with Kirsten a couple months before. So I'm glad this all comes full circle. But in terms of that shift and that self-intervention, I'm kind of curious about what that's looked like for you. And I say that because, I mentioned where I am in my life, and I feel like so much of it has just been it's building and building and building. And I'm happy with where I am career-wise and who I'm surrounded by. And it doesn't feel like for me now there's a need for that intervention. And yet I know that there are people who are listening who are questioning, how do I get out of this situation that I'm in that I realize isn't the healthiest? Is there one part is that I wonder if there was a moment of realization or something that sparked that change for you, or if there wasn't, or even if there was, is there any advice you have for someone to kind of make that shift? Because that's a massive move. I don't know how many miles it is, but I know it's a lot of miles.
It's basically going from New York to California,
other side of the
Vegas.
country.
It's very far.
So how did that happen? And kind of any advice for folks that are experiencing similar conflict of I need to get out of here?
Well, I am a person that enjoys taking action and doing something and getting something done. So what I did personally, because I was just nothing, I wasn't moving in any sort of direction. I was just kind of on a hamster wheel. I was making a lot of money. Yeah, I was having a good time. But I was going on that up and down with the booze blues. And I just was I was kind of bored of that circle, that cycle. And so I was well, what do I want to do? And I kind of looked at if I did this for the next 10 years, would I be happy with the life that I led? And I was no. Like, no, if I look back and I did exactly what I'm doing right now for the next 10 years, would I be happy with the choices that I made in this moment? So I basically just looked at what I was doing right now, and I was wondering if that would have been enough for me. Would that would just be satisfied with me? Would I be proud of what I've done in this particular moment if I were to look back 10 years from now? And that was a hard no for me. And so obviously making such a big move and change is challenging, absolutely. And everybody's like, you're not going anywhere, you're so Montreal, you're not leaving Montreal, there's no way. And I also like proving people wrong, and I like being someone of my word. If I say I'm going to do something, yeah, I'm going to do it. So what I actually did to help propel me is I entered myself in a filmmaking contest that took place in Whistler. And so Whistler is just like outside of Vancouver. One of my best friends, the best friend that I actually moved to Montreal with, or for like kind of to live with, she was living in Whistler at that point. And so I was like, I have somewhere to go stay in Whistler. So I'll go stay with her and I'll enter this like filmmaking contest, and it will give me a reason or a date at least to need to be gone by. So I gave myself a deadline, and I entered this contest. So I would have to enter this deadline. I bought myself a plane ticket to make sure that I fulfilled this deadline. And then I just started selling everything that I had and like completely purging my life, taking everything to donations, Dollarama, Goodwill, kind of garage sales, just like getting rid of everything. I just started purging everything and just forcing myself to, I bought a plane ticket, so I'm on this plane no matter what. And I gave my notice with like my, the place where I was living, and I just forced myself to do it. So I gave myself a deadline and I gave myself a reason to go, and I just upheld that.
So like what was the new like Chantele like in that new era, in your new era that you kind of encountered, which I'm assuming I don't know if you still consider yourself in that phase, because it sounds like you've been able to like settle into the things that define you more now. But yeah, what was that new life like and getting started? Because it does sound like there was a need to reboot, especially when a lot of people saw you this way, one way, and you saw yourself in another. And so you had to establish that. But how did you go about doing that?
Well, I every morning I went to yoga at 7 a.m. Because it's like 10 a.m. in the East Coast. So like I woke up every day at 7 a.m. or I was waking up pretty early. So I went to yoga every day. So that was one thing. I didn't immediately start working in bars and restaurants. So I was working at like a clothing store. And so that was helpful to like completely kind of change what I was used to up until that point. So because working in bars and restaurants makes it very easy to be living that kind of party lifestyle. So I didn't do that right away. In 2012, this was in 2011 that I moved. In 2012, I saw Earthlings, which is this movie that was about like kind of like food and how human beings treat other human beings. It was narrated by Joaquin Phoenix, and it made me really not want to consume meat anymore. And so I actually went cold turkey, no pun intended, raw vegan. And so like I bought a dehydrator and a food processor, and I was just making, and I went to like become like a raw vegan culinary chef. Like I did some courses in that, and like I'm not fully certified, but like I could still make some good raw vegan treats for sure. And so like I was raw vegan for a year, and I was this woman that she does angel readings. And so when she was she was giving me a reading, and she just had an epiphany in that moment. She's like, oh, I want to start angel nights. And so I kind of helped her conceptualize this angel nights that she used to have, that I used to go to all the time, where you'd like, one night would be about Archangel Michael, and another one would be about Jophiel or Metatron. And like it would be channeled messages from that particular angel. And so I'd go to those, like, I think she had them once a month or so. And so that was also getting me into having a community of kind of spiritual friends. And so that's kind of where, like, because I found Vancouver to be boring and I wasn't immediately working in like the bar industry,
Yeah.
I was able to make new friends and connections that were a little bit more spiritually inclined. And so I went on like a spiritual retreat to Mount Shasta. And then like I was just connecting with different people than I would have connected if I was still living in Montreal. That allowed me to open up that side, because I did find these people fascinating. I loved learning about their stories, learning about how intuition affects them, seeing everybody that was in my friend groups were all psychics and like, you know, mystics and very spiritually inclined. And so that's kind of where I was just started to really soaking in their knowledge and information. And that was what was feeding me at that time. So I would say when I was in Vancouver, spiritually, I was kind of like a sponge. I was kind of like really open to hearing about new modalities, reading books about new spiritual, directions that you could go in. And so yeah, when I was in Vancouver, that happened. And then also, this is also really funny. This is going to take us on another tangent. Are you okay?
Oh, I love a tangent. I'm like I'm like getting on, I'm hopping aboard the Chantele train. Like, let's go.
Okay, so this other tangent. So while I was in Vancouver, so you know that I was always a dancer, but ballet was my forte. I used to compete in ballet. I have some trophies and all that stuff. So ballet was like my dance, my jam. Then I was like a raver or whatever, and then I quit dance. When I was living in Montreal, I was having this like feeling. I'm like, I want to start dancing again. I miss dancing. And I remember a friend of mine, he said to me, he's like, you can't start dancing again at 28. You're too old. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And so like that was kind of like, I know, I get it. But like, that's like what I was thinking. I was like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, he's right. Like all my artistic dreams are over with dance. Like I forget about dance. So I forgot about it. But then I moved to Vancouver and I had all this like free time, and like I ended up aligning with another woman named Chantele, who started a performance group called Stilettoettes. And so the Stilettoettes, and so she was a dancer in LA, and she was always like, oh, I'd be wearing running shoes for all my rehearsals, and then I'd have to dance on stage with the artists, and they put us in heels, and we didn't ever really practice wearing heels. So she wanted to create basically a boot camp for women to start dancing and training in heels. And I was obsessed. So I was like, yeah. So I was like one of her first people in this performance training group. And so we trained together, and then we performed together out in Vancouver. And so I was like, I got back into my dancing again. So it's like sexy heels, or like sexy hip hop in heels. I was doing that. And like, I was super excited to be back with like dancers and dancing again. And it got me into go-go dancing. So while I was in those years, so I was being super spiritual, but then making some of my money, I was dancing on bars every weekend to make some extra money. So I was a go-go dancer.
Yeah.
And one night, I danced at one party at the Electric Owl one weekend for this DJ. And then the next weekend, I was dancing at this like after hours club called Gorgamesh. And so I was backstage, and actually, I should have told another part of the story. Okay, but let's do a little rewind in this story. So I was also doing some background work. And so usually I wouldn't, as an actor, do any background work, but there was just so much background work on like commercials or, movies. And if you're not cast in the movie, doing background work is fine, because you're not going to really burn your opportunity to work on the actual television show. So like I was doing background work, and as a union member, it's kind of a decent wage for an 8-hour shift. And so I was doing some background work, and I was sitting in the makeup trailer, and beside me was this woman, and she was just talking to the makeup artist, and she's like, yeah, like I just work like 10 days a month or so. I make about $2,000 to $2,500 a month. And I was like, oh, that's not bad. What do you do? What are you doing? She's like, oh, I'm a flight attendant. And I'm like, oh, for which company? And she's like, oh, for Air Transat. I'm like, okay, like, I've heard of them, of course. And she's like, oh, they're hiring. Like, if you're interested. I'm like, well, I never really thought about it. Like, do you need to have like a really good second language? She's like, do you just have to say that you're learning? I'm like, okay, well, my French is fine. If you have to say that you're learning, I can speak French fine. And like, I can get better French. Like, I'm close enough to bilingual. Like, that's totally fine. So I'm like, okay, let me give this a try. So she told me all the steps that needed to be taken in order to get this job. And so she gives me the referral. I do this interview. I think it's a great interview. I've always gotten pretty much every job that I've ever interviewed for. I did half the interview in French. They're like, oh my God, you're amazing. Can't wait to fly with you, see you up in the air. Like, you were such a great candidate. It's so excited. And she told me that if I were going to be moving on in the process, that I would get like my uniform fitting that day. I would do my medical that day. I got to do all these steps that day. And he takes me down the elevator and walks me out. And I was like, oh, I guess I didn't get the job. She's like, they're like, can't wait to see you. You were amazing. Like, we'll be so lucky to have you. Like, just really laying it on thick. And then 2 weeks later, I get that we regret to inform you that you have not been accepted into the training. So I was like, that's annoying. I didn't even want this job. Like, she just told me that it was going to be easy to get. That's so weird. I was annoyed. And then I was dancing at this club, Gorgamesh, and I was backstage. And this guy comes up to me and he shows me a picture of me. He's like, is this you? Like, I think I saw you dancing last week on this stage. And I was like, I looked at my, oh yeah, actually, yeah, that is me. That is me dancing.
What?
So we get to talking, and I don't know how it came up, but I told him how I was annoyed with going for this interview for flight attendant work. And I didn't end up getting the job. And he's like, well, why don't you come work with us? And I'm like, oh, what's us? And he's like, Sunwing. I'm like, oh, what's that? And he's like, well, it's a similar airline to Air Transat. We do like vacation traveling, but like, we're such a big family. We're so amazing. Like, whatever, we should all you should come and work with us. So I was like, well, like, if they're hiring, I'll go for the interview. I don't care about this job, but like, I'll do it. So I ended up, he messaged me and I go for the interview. I end up getting the job and I'm still employed by Sunwing to this day. So I don't know if I added it in my stuff, but I have been a flight attendant for 7 years.
Wait, what? Wait, hold. So wait, you've been a flight attendant for 7 years.
Yes. So this company in particular is seasonal.
Okay.
So basically from November to April is high time, like here. And so in the winter month is when I would be working. Sometimes if I choose to, I could work in the summertime, but they don't have as many flights just because it's a vacation airline. It's not like just going to like small cities back and forth. So it's not that kind of airline. It's definitely vacation traveling. So only seasonally did I work. And I've been laid off for the last 2 years because of COVID. So yes, you never knew me as somebody that was flying because I was laid off from March 13th.
No, we need to get you back on those flights.
The day before the world locked down, I was lying on a beach in Costa Rica. So like,
good for you that you got back home after all that. Then again, oh my gosh, connecting the dots. Is your background supposed to be Costa Rica and the beach you were on before the pandemic?
Actually supposed to be LA. I think it is LA. So
it's giving LA. It's giving LA.
Part of when I was telling you maybe in the beginning about how I wanted to use what I've learned about the law of attraction, creating your own destiny, and hypnotherapy. I wanted to elevate actors in, level up in their career and being able to really imagine and then aspire to and then create the career that they really want to have. And so I created Star Talent Coaching and hypnosis. I've added hypnosis now onto that. And so this was the background that I was choosing to have as my Star Talent Coaching and hypnosis background, just because it was I don't know, it was LA, but it was still chill and cool. It was uniform, and then I just started using it for doing my reality TV stuff, and now it's stuck and I can't change it.
So, you can never change it. It's iconic.
I can't change it. I know. People recognize me. I've played like online reality games, and people are like, oh my God, I recognize you from your background.
Oh,
like,
from your background.
Don't vote me out.
Yeah, I know. So, I feel like you have to walk down the street like with a background, that same background, like strapped to your back, just so people are like, oh my gosh.
Just like hold it behind me.
Yes. Wow. This is all incredible to hear. So you're a flight attendant, technically.
Yes, I'm trained and I've flown many flights.
There's so many directions to go in, and I feel like this is something that I'm not surprised by, that I kind of just expected coming in, that we would be like, boom, there's that, but there's so much that ties together. Like one of the things that I'm kind of picking up from just your journey so far is, number one, there was this point of like being seen and recognized for your talents and who you were and what you cared about, and thankfully you were able to go become a Claudie. But then, you know, things evolved and you were feeling out of alignment with who you were and who you are, or who you were at the time and where you were. And then you kind of worked to change that and shift that and manifested a different life and world for you. And I am so curious to pivot into just more of some of what you've talked about with hypnotherapy, with tarot, with all of the things. I'm just so curious, like maybe like just to give me like the setup of it, because I'm not a person who's ever been big on, and I've always been interested, but never big on actually like doing tarot readings. I've never had anything to do with hypnotherapy, but maybe we'll have to talk about that after the fact, or with astrology and all of the things. Like, what? Uh, maybe the question I want to ask you is, for someone who's not as familiar, like, what am I potentially missing? I feel like I know I'm missing something. But what am I missing, or what is it that's so like powerful about these things that you've made such a pivotal part of your life?
So, okay, I'll start with tarot specifically. So,
Yeah.
some people are scared of tarot because some of like the imagery are a little bit, scary. Some of the names of the cards might be scary, but the meanings of the cards actually are completely different than maybe what the imagery might, bring up inside of you. And so,
Mhm.
with cards in general, even if it's an oracle card, so oracle cards just will have maybe just a phrase and some images that will allow you to tap into your intuition. And so, really, I find that cards, I find that astrology, and even hypnotherapy are an opportunity for you to dive into your subconscious, to dive into your intuition, to have a connection or a conversation with your inner truth and your inner knowing. And so,
Mhm.
when using tarot, it's actually like, some people don't use the specific meanings of the cards. They will just look at it, and what's coming to them intuitively will give whatever meaning is best for the person, that the client that's getting the reading. So
Mhm.
I always put in an intention anytime I'm doing a reading, that it's going to be for the highest and best good of the person that I'm giving the reading for. Everything is going to be positive and for their highest growth and learning. And so I'm
Mhm.
never going to give a bad reading that's going to scare you into something. I always preface any reading with, everyone has their own free will. Everybody has a life that can go in infinite directions and has infinite possibilities. And I may just be seeing a potential
Mhm.
trajectory for your life, but you would have to go and do exactly what this particular trajectory would show. You still have complete free will to change that direction. So if that is not where you want to end up, you do not have to put any belief energy into where where that potential could end up. And so you really have your own free will. And same with hypnotherapy. Our teacher, Grace Smith, she says that all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. It's because you're allowing yourself to change your beliefs in order for you to have the result that you choose to have. And so we
Yeah.
talked in the beginning about your belief creates your own reality, and your thoughts create your own reality, or your thoughts create things. And so if you do not believe something, if you say, I can't do that, then you can't do that. And so if you came into hypnotherapy with me, and I would always ask you, like, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you want for this change to happen? If you say 1, I will say that I will not be able to help you, because on an energetic level, on a thought level, on a belief level, you have to be at least like a 7, 8, 9, or even 10 to actually
Mhm.
allow yourself to make the changes necessary in order for you to have that outcome that you desire. Long and short of it all, cards allow you to tap into your intuition. So
Yeah.
whether I'm reading it for you, I'll be tapping into my own intuition, and asking to have like a connection with your intuition to give you a reading that would be best, exactly what you needed to hear in this moment, for you to actualize all the things that you want on your path, right? And so, because you would be manifesting me in that moment, right? You would
Yeah.
manifest everything that I say to you would be something that some part of you wanted to hear in that particular particular moment. So if it's to propel you to go out to the store and buy a lottery ticket, or to go for a walk and then you bump into somebody that's going to give you your next job, whatever it is, it could be part of your path to be seeing me. So I feel as though anything that comes out in those sessions are for your highest and best good, and that you also manifested me to be in your life to be able to give you this reading or some sort of message. So cards just allow you to tap in. Astrology, it's similar in the sense that everybody, when they're born, are going to have a slightly different map of the sky of the planets when you were born. And so like when you look at someone's natal astrology chart, you're going to see where all the planets were, all the asteroids, where they were, how they aligned with each other, and then how, you know, you align with everybody else. And so every single planet or asteroid, they have properties, and you can go really deep into it because they all relate to Greek mythology. And so if you like go deep, like it can get really cool when you hear all the stories and all the archetypes. It has to do with all the different planets. So everybody's star sign has a planet that's attached to it. So you are a Taurus. So Taurus, they're ruled by Venus. Venus is the goddess of love, but it's also values and all things sensual. So chances are you like things that are beautiful. You probably like things that are stable because you're an earth sign. So, you know, you're having your home be beautiful would be something that you'd be inclined to. You probably like good food. You probably, you know, enjoy art. Maybe you like plants and flowers. Like you like all things beautiful. And that's usually what the goddess of love energy will bring into just a Taurus. And so just looking at your sun sign, so your sun is kind of like your ego. That's kind of the energy of your ego, is that of a Taurus that's ruled by Venus. And so you take that, but then you also have your moon, and your moon is your emotions, and your moon would be in potentially a different sign. And so that sign has a planetary influence that would influence how you deal with your emotions. And then you have, you know, your Mercury. So the planet Mercury could be in a particular sign. So my Mercury, for instance, is in Capricorn. So Capricorn is an earth sign. It's grounded. It's loyal. And so how I express myself is going to be that of a Capricorn. So I'm probably going to be matter of fact. I'm probably going to be a workhorse and get things done. So that's how I communicate with people. And so all the different planets have different meanings, and then they sit in different houses, and these houses also have different meanings. And so it really, like, I know people just like roll their eyes like, oh my God, like horoscopes don't mean anything. And usually people are reading their horoscopes wrong, because sometimes their horoscopes, people are using their rising sign or their moon sign. Like it really depends on the horoscope, and what sign of your chart you should be looking at is what the astrologer is using to create these little steps, like checkpoints. But it's definitely going to be general. And if you want to know more about you specifically, you need to have like your birth time, the location of your birth, and obviously your birthday. And then you'd be able to get a map of your chart. And then you can see how all your planets, like you have so many planets that are interacting with each other, and you'll have a better idea of who you are. And so I feel as though astrology allows you to find deeper meaning to who you truly are. And when you hear some of these things, you're like, how would you know that? You can predict certain things because you can see how the chart, like the planets in the actual world, they're moving around and they're affecting your planets in your birth chart. And so, you know, when this might hit a certain, you know, aspect in your chart, you know that, okay, maybe you're going to have a windfall of money, or maybe at this certain point in your life, you might have this happen. Like you can kind of map out things that can happen because energetically, some of the planets are aspecting each other. And so I just find personally that it's so fascinating to see just these are patterns that I'm looking at, these patterns that kind of influence people's lives, these energies, these planetary energies, how they influence each person. And for me, it allows a deeper understanding of who I am. And then if I'm reading about other people and their charts and looking at it, and I'm like, oh, that's how that manifests. So, oh my God, like I start learning more. And so seeing how people's charts live out through them, I feel that I become more connected with the human being. So I consider myself to be kind of a social anthropologist. So within acting, within astrology and tarot, like I am very fascinated by human beings, what makes them who they are, how they're able to express themselves in their lives. And I find that everything that I'm doing so far in my life allows me to learn more about being a human being and what we're capable of doing.
I love that so much because there are so many ways of knowing and understanding the world. And there are a lot of, I think of it all as data, right? Like there's astrology and what our charts say. And that's a piece of data that informs who we are. And you could look at things like Myers-Briggs, and maybe that gives you a sense of who you are, or Enneagram, and that gives you a sense of who you are, or conversations with people and just kind of teasing things out. That, like, for me, gives me a sense of who I am at times too, when I see myself in other people. And it's so powerful to hear how these have served you. And so if there are people who are, I shouldn't say if there are people who are, like, because I know there are people who are like looking to find who they are, what's the next step? Like, where should I go? Looking to these things, looking to like astrology or to tarot, or, you know, going to hypnotherapists could be something that's really powerful for getting them to like their authentic truth, which ties back to what you're saying about acting too. Like it's truth telling in so many ways, but you have to kind of find it and seek it and find it in that
from you.
sense.
And it's from the inside. And so, like, I'm a truth seeker. I am a social anthropologist. I'm fascinating about learning even more. And it could be because I'm Aquarius. So Aquarius, kind of our motto is to know. And so I love knowledge and understanding things, that I just like, I really am fascinated by that. And so, yeah, that's, I think, why all of these things have come into my life, is because I find them fascinating and I find them endless. And when I learn something new, like I love being wowed, and like then and it's just, my life just becomes always wow. Like everything wows me about my life. I'm always having another wow moment. Like those are the moments that I share with my mom. Like, oh my God, I can't wait to tell you this coincidence. Like, and I always have these amazing coincidences, and I love that. And I find that this would be really fun and exciting for me. And so it just, this path has really allowed me to find more coincidences in my life. And I love that.
Oh my gosh. I wish there was more time. I wish there was more time. Like,
time
part
is a
of me,
construct of, just kidding.
yeah. Tell them the truth. But no, I'm like, I found myself sweating because I was like, oh my gosh, are we going to do, is a tarot card reading here? Do I have to, like, are we going to make it happen? It might happen. Who knows? Is it possible to do a tarot card reading?
I can pull a card for,
do it.
Pull a card?
Get the cards. Get the card. Yeah, okay, pull the card, but we'll come back to it. Can we come back to it like at the end of the podcast? Okay, good. Because I want to be ready for this. But because you set me up really well for something, speaking of coincidences, which is a little bit of your RHAP journey. And I'm sure you could fill in the gaps, but what I remember, actually, there are two things going on here. So number one, you are the first person from the RHAP class of 2020 whose audition video I think I found, because I think it's on your YouTube. I think it's on your YouTube.
It might be.
There's a video from like June 2020. I think that's your video. I'm pretty sure it's your video. You were talking about like you were talking about road rules. You're talking about road rules a lot. Yeah, that was you. So yeah,
I'm thinking, maybe it's something. Yeah.
Maybe I'll like, who knows? Maybe I'll like edit it into this episode or something.
Hello, Rob Sesternino. My name is Chantele Francis. I'm 41 years old from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and I am a reality television superfan. I'm also a Rob Has a Podcast superfan. My mom introduced me to you guys about 5 or 6 years ago, and I've been hooked ever since. But my love affair with reality television started way back when I was in high school, and my dad introduced me to Road Rules. And I'm so happy he did. It was a bunch of 20-somethings that didn't know each other, living on an RV, traveling around a foreign country, competing for money, doing extreme sports and activities. What more can I ask for? Well, more seasons. So I went back and watched the seasons that I hadn't watched. I think I found them on a dusty VHS tape. And then I ventured down the real world rabbit hole and watched all the previous seasons of the real world. And so come to 1998, 99, I was up to date, and they decided to merge those two worlds together, creating the challenge. So it was the real world versus road rules, the challenge, and they were competing against each other. And what I love about the challenge, we're on season 35 right now, is that I was always able to see someone that looked like me. I felt like it was very diverse, very inclusive. There were just all these different walks of life, and now I had been growing up with them. So season 35, I'm always going to be Team OG because I've grown up with these people. I love how inclusive the MTV is. I love how, you know, I feel a kinship with all these people competing because they still bring back these OG players every season. And they, I feel, is what creates the show for me, especially as a longtime watcher, is that it's so nostalgic watching it. And I'll always be a fan of MTV's The Challenge. So get back and start watching the episodes from way in the beginning so you could be a super fan of MTV's The Challenge like me.
I saw that. You're the first person who I saw their video and all that. But the other thing is, you and your mom manifested you podcasting with Rob Sesternino, creator of Rob as a Podcast. What? Okay. What was the time? Could you remind me of the timeline of this?
Yeah. Okay.
And then more than anything, I'm curious, like, what it actually felt like to have that manifestation come true. But please tell the people. This is insane.
Yes. Oh my God. So I told you when I was living in Vancouver, it was a little bit more boring version of me, but I was always up to date on all my shows. So even when I was living in Montreal, my mom would tape for me Big Brother and send me like weekly Big Brother VHS tapes in the mail. She would send them to me, and she would send me, what else did she send me? I think it was all the MTV stuff too. She would send me because I just had regular cable. I didn't have like specialty channels, so she would send me just tapes of all these shows. So I was always up to date with all my shows. I'd watch Thursday at that time, Survivor on Thursdays at that time. When I was living in Vancouver, I did have a cable and all that stuff, but she would tell me, she's like, oh, I like this podcast. Do you remember Rob Sesternino? Like, he was on that season and he used to do like his votes as like Casey Kasem, and she'd like be telling him, I'm like, I don't know, I don't remember, I don't remember. Like, I didn't want to give it to her that like I remembered, or like I didn't want to think about it. I'm like, I don't know, I don't want to listen to a podcast. Like, it just seemed so boring to me. I didn't want to listen to a podcast. I didn't understand what telling me about, right? I was like, I don't want to do that. And then I think I realized that it was a video, or no, I don't remember what happened, but I finally listened to something and I was hooked. I was like, oh, this is fun. This is funny. And then I started listening to everything that Rob did. And I just was like listening to all of his Survivor stuff. And I can't remember what was going on at the time. Like maybe there was an Amazing Race that was going on as well. I just started to listen to all of his stuff. And then Taryn came into the mix. And so I just became like a regular listen to all things Rob as a Podcast, because they were all shows that I watched. So I knew all the references to, you know, past seasons, past contestants of all these shows, because I'd watched them all. And I basically was growing up with like all these shows. And so when I don't know when I said this to my mom, but I think I was still living in Vancouver. I said, I'm like, man, one of these days I am going to podcast for, I think, do you know what? This is what I think happened. So I auditioned for season 2 of Big Brother Canada. And that was the first time that I'd made it through like some hoops. Like, it was my first time I auditioned for them. I'll send you that audition tape if you want to see that one. That's a funny one.
Oh yeah.
So I was like thinking that I was gonna probably get on this show, and so I was thinking like, oh, so like I was thinking maybe in my head like maybe that's how I'm gonna get to talk to Rob has a podcast, because like I was talking to my mom, I'm like I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but like I don't know, somehow like I'm gonna podcast with Rob from Rob has a podcast, like it was just something, and maybe it's gonna be because I'm gonna be on Big Brother Canada, and like that's kind of I think that might be how I started thinking about it, but I didn't get on that show. It ended up being Ika that was the black girl of that season, you know.
Yes, because back in the day when they could only have one. Look at that.
Only one.
Yes.
And so I just kind of forgot about it. I still listened to everything. Watched when it switched over to YouTube. I used to watch all the YouTube recaps and all that stuff. And I remember when Taryn started to do the live feed updates, I said to my mom the same thing. I'm like, one of these days I'm gonna do a live. Imagine like I did a live feed update with Taryn. I'm like, you imagine, mom. Like, because we just talked about how like. Oh, Taryn, he's so smart and he's so good and he's so young and like, but he just knows so much. Like, we used to always go on about how great Taryn was and like how it'd be so awesome. And like, I'd be so nervous if I was like podcasting and doing an update with Taryn. And like, I've now since obviously I've manifested doing live feed updates with Taryn and obviously being part of Rob as a podcast, but definitely it started off at around, I believe 2012 or 2013 was when, I got introduced to it, and that's when I think I originally put out the intention beam.
Yeah, and so I mean, you've seen it coming though for so long in a way. I mean, you didn't know how things would work out, but you've seen it coming in a lot of ways, whereas so many of us, like I started listening in 2017, and maybe in 2019 at some point I was like, what would it be like to actually be, in some of these conversations? And, specifically for me, it was season 39 of Survivor, which was the season with like the sexual assault and inappropriate touching.
I did that one with Chappelle. We did that for the 40, the rankings of 40. So I had to relive that season, but continue.
That was this, and I did the patron Q&A of that too. So I also rewatched it, and I remember that was, because I had a background of in sexual assault, peer education, and supporting survivors too. And I was like, oh my gosh, if only I could be in these conversations. And Rob and everyone he had on did such a great job covering it at the time. But that's when I started to think about that. And then, 7 months later was the class of 2020. And so everything happened kind of so fast, but you saw it coming in a lot of ways. And now here you are 10 years later with the dream that manifested. What does it feel like? It's just like, yeah, I knew I would be here, or what's that feeling?
Well, I did know that I would be there. But I guess I'm more surprised by how. Because I thought it would be maybe as an actor, I worked on something and then I'd just be involved in being able to be in close proximity, or like I would get onto Big Brother Canada and like I would then talk to them on like I just thought it would be something more either the creative arts or being on one of these reality shows. And so I don't even use Twitter. I don't know how I saw that damn tweet. I have no idea. Like I was like, I saw the tweet. I was like, oh, like, well, I'm never on Twitter, so this was definitely meant for me to see. And so I saw this tweet, and I just put together a video, and like obviously the rest is history. But I guess it feels like I knew it was going to happen, but the surprise about it all was the how, because I did not think that it was going to be the events that happened. Like I didn't think the world was going to shut down, so I'd have free time to be able to be podcasting and being part of that world so actively before 2020. And like I was pretty busy. Like I would fly from Fridays to Sundays. I'd be auditioning or working on a show Monday to Thursday, and then I did one day a week. I was bartending at a Japanese restaurant. So I didn't have any time like to be podcasting if the world didn't shut down. So the world shut down. George Floyd incident happened. Then the call out for diversity happened. And I definitely did not think that that was going to be the direction that I was going to be able to start podcasting with my heroes.
Wow. Yeah, and it's like so wild to think about the series of events that led to all of this. I always like to tell people I applied definitely within 10 minutes of the deadline because I recorded my video.
I probably was over the deadline. I don't know. I'm never on time and stuff like that. I don't remember, but
I know. I don't know. Yeah, and but it's like the type of thing I remember recording the video and then sitting on it like, can I do this? Can I picture it? Like, can I see myself on a podcast with Mike Bloom, Josh Wigler, Jessica Leese, like Taryn Armstrong, Rob Sesternino? Actually, with Rob, I felt like I was like, oh, I could be on a podcast with Rob. I could picture that.
Well, I thought the interview was terrifying. Not terrifying, but I was like, all these people that I'm obsessed with, I'm just sitting here interviewing. I believe Shannon Gus was on, and obviously Rob, Josh Wigler,
Bryce. Was Bryce there?
Bryce was not in mine. No.
Okay. You had like a lot of people.
Mike Bloom, I think. Liana, Bloom, I think. Yeah, I don't know. Either Mike Bloom was or was not. It might have just been Liana because she asked me who I liked from Drag Race Canada, and I said Lemon. And so yeah, I don't remember if Mike was there or not. But it was just like a star-studded panel, and I was like,
yeah. I know. I've said to Sam Moore, producer with RHAP, release the tapes, Sam. Release the tapes, because that, in my mind, was the best podcast that I did up to that point, and the best podcast I've done since. And it's just a 10-minute recording of me with like all the people you mentioned and some others, and it was a moment. And I don't know what got into me, but like I'm just glad that we made it and we're here.
I know. I mean, it definitely was meant to be. I'm so proud to be part of the class of 2020. Like, just even having everything come together when we were in New York in May, and like, you know, it was pretty cool to know that it was still this dream that I had 10 years ago is still manifesting into even more than I thought it was ever going to be. And so I'm just like, I'm grateful just for even putting out the idea that I wanted to be part of. I didn't even know if I wanted to be a part of Rob. I just wanted to podcast with Rob as a podcast, or with him once, is kind of what like I was imagining, and I didn't even think that it would be possible to be part of his community.
Oh, like I love it so much. I love it so much. I'm like, this is definitely one of those interviews where we could be here for probably 7 hours going through detail. That's one day we'll set up some time, maybe in person. We'll sit down for like the whole day, maybe build in some bathroom breaks and water breaks, and just like do a chronological.
Well, what will have to happen is like I'll have to like win a TV show, like, and then like we'll have like my 5-hour deep dive or something.
The beauty of it is that we don't even need that, but it could happen, you know. That's one lesson. That's one lesson I think is kind of cool overall about what you're saying, though, is that you don't necessarily know like how you'll get there or what the path will look like, but you know, like you could do things to get that to get to that point, and we have to be open to the possibilities of how it comes up. So if you were like, no, Rob, I'm not gonna apply for your class of 2020, instead I'm gonna apply for these reality shows or these acting gigs in hopes that it gets me to be on your show, like, then you wouldn't be here. So there's a lot there are a lot of dots to connect. But I have to ask, as we get to this point where we have to start to wind down, unfortunately, and I haven't forgotten about the tarot card, but I want to ask you about your life and kind of like summing up your story. It's a question I ask everybody. If your life were a book or documentary, what would the title be?
Oh boy.
And why would that be the title of your book or documentary? No,
okay, let's see if I can tune in and get like the exact answer.
Feel it.
Get along. Are you giving me some music to tune in?
I'm like trying to give you something to like calming that's not just my voice. Chantele, you could do this. Feel the title. Feel the title. Feel the title.
Okay, can we keep talking, and then let's see if like a title will come to me while like I'll think about it. I guess you need to like let it simmer for a second. Because if I press
That's
too hard,
deep.
that's another thing too.
That's
Like
the
with
lesson, though.
manifestation, sometimes is like if you try too hard to make an outcome happen, then it will never come. So I just need to give it maybe a little bit of space so that I can have like the click, the moment, the insight to happen.
That was the most real moment, in the sense that totally is the reflection of what I just said. Like, sometimes we force things, and then that thing doesn't come because we're trying to force it rather than it coming. But we could keep going. And actually, I think that this is a good time for the cards. Okay. I want to get to the cards. I don't know what to do.
Maybe the cards are going to inform this too.
Maybe they will, but I'm going to sit back. I don't know if this is a card. What is this a card reading? Is it for me? Is it for Pod Friends? Is it for Rob as a podcast? I don't know.
Let's do, because I feel that anytime you hear a reading, that you were meant to, there's some part of the message that was meant for you to hear. So yes. I'm just going to pull a card or two, and I'm going to just give a general reading to what the card could mean, and we'll see what happens with that. Does that work for you?
Okay.
So
I'm on the ride. I'm here
the highest
for whatever.
Best, okay, I don't want 10 cards.
Yeah.
The highest and best good for anybody that's listening, myself included, to see what the cards have to say.
Oh my God, this is exciting.
Let's see.
Am I allowed to talk over the shuffling of the cards?
Do whatever you like.
Oh. All right. There we go. This is thrilling. I did have a reading once, like 10 years ago. And I actually had 2 readings around the same time. They were interesting. I think they were both pretty accurate readings, but it's been a while. I need to get in touch with my tarot life. Ooh, there's a card.
Okay. Yes. So this is the 10 of Cups in reverse. So whenever I see reverse cards, that's when a card is upside down. I usually think that that's going to be a block of some sort. So generally speaking, because I deal with the subconscious, I usually think of it being a subconscious block or a subconscious belief. And so this card upright is usually showing, like, you can see that family, and there's a rainbow, and everything is unity. Cups are about emotions and intuition. And so everything is full. Your cups are full. 10s are also, it's kind of like a 1. So it's a new beginning, because since it's a 10, a new beginning with lessons learned. And so that's in reverse right now. And so I'm thinking that this card is saying that maybe we're blocking ourselves from having an openness and expansiveness to a new idea, a new possibility, because of maybe some limiting beliefs or limiting thought patterns that is not allowing us to see this upright, to see maybe utmost potential for your future, to see the possibility of having, if you are looking for a family or having completion in some part of your life, maybe there's a block that maybe you don't deserve it, or you don't feel you're worthy of it, or you don't feel that you are the type of person that is going to be able to manifest the life of their dreams. And so this card is saying to me that maybe we need to take a look on the beliefs that we have about our life if we want to see our life in a different way. So if we want to have that future life where all things are seemingly amazing, and that you have family and your cups and your intuition, your relationships are all in alignment, all rainbows, beautiful, and butterflies, then maybe we're going to have to take a look at the beliefs that we have that might be blocking that potential from showing up. And then I put another one kind of came out.
Oh,
perfect. So this is the Knight of Cups. So knights are kind of like the teenagers in the court cards. And so knights are all about taking actions. They're charged forward. Cups, as I mentioned before, are about relationships, intuition. They are water. And so this is saying that if you're looking, I don't know why this is like a kind of like a love card. So if you're looking for love right now, I think having a relationship with yourself, allowing yourself to love yourself, be loved, is also a way for you to attract that kind of energy. This is like your knight in shining armor. When I was learning tarot, we called this card John Mayer's, because he's always singing about like, the body is a wonderland. And like, it's just like, he's just so romantic. It's like a poet, maybe like a Pisces, just having these romantic thoughts and ideas. But in order for you to be able to align with a love relationship, that you also kind of have to give that love to yourself. And so I always kind of joke around like buzzwords like self-love, self-care, and people kind of roll their eyes when we say these things, but really treating yourself in a loving way, being kind to yourself. And that's also your words that you say to yourself, the thoughts you think about your beliefs, your capabilities, what you've done in your past, what you're doing right now. Any thoughts that you have is a form of how you are treating yourself and how you are loving yourself. So if your thoughts aren't loving towards yourself all the time, do you really have self-love? So this card to me is saying take charge, take energy with how you are surrounding yourself in love in order for you to be in alignment with the love that you may seek. And with that would possibly allow this to become upright, because right now that is blocked. So maybe you're blocking the energy of love from your life right now, the energy of connection, the energy of romance and being in completion in your relationships. So maybe right now that's something to focus on, is love in your life and how to bring more of it into your life.
Damn, that's deep. That's deep. And it's powerful too, because I think that there's so much there. There's so much to like dig into and dive into. And it's so, I feel like we need to have like a follow-up session. We need to dive in deeper. I just come back weekly maybe for these, because there's so much there that I think is about, especially with the first card, that I'm like, because I think that was such a powerful place to start in terms of like, you could have that new beginning, but you need to flip that. You need to flip how you look at things. You need to flip away from those limiting beliefs. And I talk all the time about like my own limiting beliefs. I talk all the time with people about where those come from for us, but also how we work our way through them. And that's where the night even comes in, like where there's that sense of like romantic love, but there's also like this thing that you were saying that I really resonate with even more, which is like I'll call it like the Lizzo of it, where it's like, oh, I've been working on myself, I've been loving myself, I've been the Beyonce of it, just like the really tapping in to that tap in. So I love it. I love it. I love this. And I feel like this must resonate with people. This is deep. People are like, Matt, tell us all of the ways that this applies to you. I'm like, no, we're gonna have to wait for the Pod Friends interview with Matt Scott for that. But I will say, Chantele, I appreciate you. You're the greatest. You're the kindest. You are like sharing so much of yourself, and there's so much more. Well, one, it seems like there's so much that you share that kind of goes around, and like I appreciate you leaning into the love that's there, because like one thing I've discovered is there's so much love for all of us, for me, for you, for like whoever comes on. And like this is a good moment where you hear a little bit of it, but there are so many people who love and like value and appreciate and all the things for us, and it's sometimes hard to embrace that. That's a thing that I've struggled with a lot too, going back to the cards. And so it's like amazing that you could be here, and I hope that the people let you know how much they appreciate you and admire you and want to get readings from you and all of the other things.
Well, I mean, obviously being in New York was the first time I really realized that my voice has been impactful in any sort of way. You know, when you do any of these podcasts, you're just speaking to usually some friends about a show that you really love and have your opinions and insights be heard. But you don't realize that there are faces behind, like all I see is my screen right now, and I see you and I see me, and I don't realize that there's faces beyond that are listening, and they resonate with each of us differently. And so it was really a powerful moment when being in New York, that people like, they know my voice. They would turn around and be like, I hear Chantele. And I'm like, what? Like, you know what my voice is
it's
like?
Real.
Like, it's so real. Exactly. And so I'm so grateful and appreciative that people like what I have to say and welcomed me to Rob as a podcast. I know at the very beginning, there was a little bit of hesitancy with some people not being that excited about having any any sort of change or whatnot. And so
Yeah.
I do feel as though, I was like embraced into the community, and it feels really, really nice to know that people, like, what I have to say matters. And,
Yeah.
it's really nice to have that sort of validation. So thank you for, giving me another opportunity to speak a little bit more. Not that I don't speak enough already. I could talk
No,
forever.
you don't speak enough already, which is why why I have to come back to this question. If you're of your title, the
I
title
got
of
it.
your life.
I got
Oh,
it.
wow.
It's
I don't know. Oh, wait. I don't
I
know if
got
I'm
it.
ready. I don't know if I'm ready.
Not,
Wait. Okay. Let me repeat this just so the people know. Chantele, if your life were a book or documentary, what would the title be and why?
from reality to realness. And so my podcast name is Reality Realness with 3 S's. And so, I really, just in my life in general, I'm taking what I've had in my reality. So my reality, all the things that I've learned about, all the
Mm-hmm.
things that I've experienced, whether it's being from my arts background, whether it's being from my spiritual background, whether it's from being, a law of attraction life coach, or a flight attendant, or a bartender, all these things are from my reality. But you know what that transitions me to? Being real, being my authentic self,
Mm-hmm.
being able to be vulnerable, tap into who I truly am, being able to connect with sides of myself that not everybody gets to see, showing
Yes.
my insides. My teacher, Jacqueline, that I mentioned before, she says,
Yeah.
got to show all your bumps and warts. And so that's the
Mm.
realness of me. So it's from reality, all the things that I've experienced in my life, to realness. And then all that encompasses my reality TV show, podcast, and YouTube channel, Reality Realness. So that's my answer.
Could you do the hand motion again? From reality
From reality to
to
realness.
realness. I love that. It's beautiful. And I just want to thank you so much for bringing your realness to this conversation. That is like so much of what this is about, even if it's like there's so many pieces and so many elements that make up who you are. And even if there's so much more to dive into, I'm just always so thankful for the people who tune in to like listen and hear and understand and grasp your realness. And one thing I want to say as we wrap up is kind of to turn to you, to ask, kind of as a pitch for this episode, like if there was a soundbite right now that was at the start of this episode, I'd love to know, like, why should someone listen? What should they expect tuning into this hour and a half conversation that we just had?
I think actually just this last bit, I think from reality or realness, I think because that encompasses everything that we've talked about. We talked about the reality of me, and, a lot about where I came from, and what I've experienced in my life. And then how it's become authentically who I am right now. And so you asked many times about, like, so how did that get you to this point? And how did that get you here? And how did that get you to this point? And so I think that from the reality of it all to the realness of it all, I think that that's kind of the pattern that we went through, is going from reality to realness. How do we change it
I
from
love
here
the
to
hand
here?
motion.
No,
Yes.
it's the Rayburn.
Everybody on the podcast, if you are listening, reality is on your left. Move it over to realness, which is on your right, and do it with us. Both your hands. Listen, like you're carrying a box or a ball or a crystal ball, maybe.
It's crystal ball,
Reality,
yeah.
realness, reality to
Reality to
realness.
realness. From reality
Yeah.
to realness.
Oh my God. Thank you so much for this. This is the end. Oh my! Anything else you want to say before I hit stop record? I don't know if there's anything, but
I mean, I think that I have to say thank you so much for just inviting me here today. I mean, I know that I've had a really interesting life story and life path, and I've done so many different things. A lot of people are like, is there anything you haven't done? I'm like, not really. I like saying yes to a lot of different things. I like trying new things. I like living in new places. I like learning new things. So people say that I'm a Jackie of all trades, and it really is true. Because, like, I do like experiencing and knowing and understanding a lot of different things. So I think it's that social anthropologist in me, always wanting to know, that Aquarius, like seeker of knowledge, like that's really who I am. So I really thank you for just like that opportunity for me to kind of speak about myself, because I don't speak about myself that often. Usually I'm giving readings for other people. Usually the hypnotherapy session is for somebody else. And so, yes, I can be reflective into some of the messages that come through that could be meaningful for me, but I'm generally not the one that people are giving the reading to or having the session. Like, I'm not usually that person. I'm usually the facilitator. So it was just very nice to actually just get to talk about me. Like, I don't usually have that. And so I appreciate having the opportunity here. And so thank you for inviting me.
My honor, my privilege. And this message is for Rob Sesternino. Rob, you need to put some RHAP tarot cards in the Rob has a website.com shop, because then I'll give you a reading when we have RHAP tarot cards.
Oh, I've been thinking of actually creating a deck for artists. And so I haven't fully conceptualized it yet, but like, I do find that the path of the artist or the creative person is just a little bit of a different path. And so I wanted to have, like, I don't know how I'd do like different suits, like maybe like instruments would be like all the air, like, I don't know. I haven't figured out how to make it work, but I have been thinking it's in there. So once it's in the mind, that means the next step, it's going to be manifest in the 3D. So it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah, get the copyrights and the trademarks in place, and then we'll have you back on Pod Friends to talk all about it. Do you just want to give like closing words? Any final words? Any like closing thing? Any few words? Sign off? Any of it, Chantele? The floor is yours.
Well, I always say that you're really able to create anything that you want in your life. And so I know a lot of people, might get hung up on what they're seeing that is happening in the world, but know that anything can change at any moment, that you are capable of doing anything that you've ever desired, and that anything that you've dreamed about, or if you have always wanted to do, you don't have those inklings for no reason. It's actually your inner child, your higher self, your soul asking you to live this out, because that is what it wants to experience through you. And so I feel as though we are spiritual beings in a physical body. And so if you have any dreams, any ideas, anything that excites you, to really act upon it, because that's really your soul's calling. So I give you permission to act upon all of your dreams, because if you can think it, you can create it, and that it's meant for you, because what you want wants you as well.
Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to this week's episode of Pod Friends featuring Chantele. And I hope you really appreciated the tarot reading she gave us. I hope it has you thinking like it has me thinking, processing ways to shift what life looks like, and also to manifest the world that we want to see. There's so much that's so powerful about what Chantele had to share, and just like all of the Pod Friends episodes, but with this one in particular, I hope it opens your mind just like it's opened my mind to different ways of finding our path, different ways of exploring, different ways of figuring out how to be a pod friend. Speaking of Pod Friends, I just want to give a special thanks to Will from America for the theme song, Scott St. Pierre behind the scenes, Hannah Lidsky, Tricky Rice, Sam Moore, Rob Sesternino, so many others who support and make this possible. Thank you so much. And if you love what you've heard today, if you love Pod Friends overall, go back in the archive, listen to so many others. And there have been a number of episodes since January of this year that you can go back and catch up on. If you've missed them, you could listen again if you already heard them, and you could follow along at Hey Pod Friends on Twitter, at Matt Scott GW on social media, podfriends at RHAPisawebsite.com. Become a patron, RHAPisawebsite.com/Patreon, aka patreon.com/RHAP. I'm out of breath, but as always, just want to thank you so much for being here, and to say until next time, thank you for being a pod friend.